Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Real Hazardous. Today I want to talk to you guys about how much it costs to own an offshore boat, own and run it really. For those of you who are wanting to move up maybe to a bigger boat, go from inshore to offshore, or just get into boating in general, I think this video will really help you understand some of the hidden costs to boating. So for those who don't know, BOAT stands for Break Out Another 1,000. At least that's the joke. Boats can be very expensive, especially offshore boats. They're in a very tough environment. You know, they're constantly banging into waves every trip. You know, it's always going up and down, moving. You're surrounded by salt water, which is very corrosive, tough on electronics and metal. So it's a pretty tough environment. I got some notes here on how much it costs to own a boat. So first off, we have boat registration. This probably depends on the size of your boat and the state, but here in Florida, a boat like ours, a 30-foot contender with twin 300s, it's $84.25, but that's reduced to $62.75 if you have an EPIRB. Then you gotta get a trailer sticker, a little sticker that goes on your trailer if you're gonna plan to trailer your boat. That costs $33.60. Then we have boat insurance. Currently we're paying about $753 per year. But of course that all depends on time, company, coverage, size of boat. You get into a triple motor boat or you go smaller, it'll be less. Another thing you might want to consider, especially if you're offshore, is to have sea tow. That's $179 per year. But if you get stuck out there and they have to tow you in, it's probably at least $500, could be more. It'll easily pay for itself quickly. So sea tow is nice to have, or towboat or whoever. Okay, the next big thing with offshore boats is the fuel. Okay, a lot of people don't know how bad a mileage boats get. See, someone once said, does your boat get good mileage? We're like, no. Like, how much does it get? We're like, how much do you think it gets? They're like, I don't know, maybe 10 miles to the gallon. I was like, I wish. Our boat probably averages 1.8 miles per gallon. If you get a triple motor boat, it's gonna go down, quads even further. But even a smaller single engine offshore boat isn't gonna get great mileage. Maybe 2.5, 2.25, depending on how you load it and what type of boat. So, you know, gas bill can be high. Also, if you have a two-stroke engine, you're gonna have to get oil to mix with the gas. Two strokes need oil mixed with their fuel. Okay, so that's typical running. Next thing is electronics. Okay, electronics don't last real long. Obviously, they can get out of date quickly, but being in such a harsh environment with water and the pounding and stuff like that, you know, they can go out quicker than normal. So figure maybe 5-8 years, probably be a good term after that, you know, eventually they go out. And electronics can be pretty expensive. Say you get a basic model like the Garmin 94 or 942 XS, starts at $1,200. Now most boats like this have two, usually one that can display your depth and one your GPS, or just having a backup is really important on an offshore boat. So figure two of those if you stay basic. Now these can get way on up there. You get a really big screen, you're talking $4,000 or $5,000 per unit. Then you're gonna definitely want a couple VHF radios. Those are about $160 per radio. Your motors are gonna need digital gauges. Those could be 700 per motor. And then you're gonna need a transducer from your boat. A pretty basic one, probably starts around 200. And then a radar. Not necessary, but if you do get it, figure around 1,400. And of course, all these can go up depending on how fancy, how many bells and whistles you want the electronics to have. Also, boats need batteries. Offshore boats typically have at least one battery per engine plus an extra. So ours has 3 batteries. Some people put 4 just to give you, a little more security while you're out there. Batteries, maybe 2 to 3 years. We actually use car batteries instead of the marine batteries. Just the way our console was set up when we got it, doesn't really have space for some of the marine batteries. And the car ones pretty much work just as well for the price. So figure, 100 to 250 for a few years, 3 or 4 years. They take a pounding and eventually you got to replace them. Depending on where you're at, there are certain safety pieces of equipment that you're required to have. So we have to have life jackets. So you can get a 4-pack for $27, kind of on the low end, which is, it'll save your life. That's all you really need it to do. And then fire extinguishers. Some boats need 1, 2, and 3 depending on their size. Figure about 20 bucks per extinguisher. Then you're going to need flares. These expire every 2 to 3 years. You can get a 4-pack for $36, and they last about 3.5 years. You can also get an electronic one, which is not a bad option either. A little more expensive, but it doesn't have an expiration date so long as you keep the batteries charged. If you want to go above and beyond, which is good if you're going way offshore, you can get an E-Perp for $450 roughly, or something like Spot X, which is about $250 for the unit plus a subscription fee. If you trailer your boat, you're going to have some trailer maintenance cost. So a trailer can be $5,000 or more, probably for something like our boat, and it's going to have some maintenance costs with that. For example, you're going to have to grease up your tires regularly. We do about $25 a year in tubes. Hubs and bearings, if you have to replace those, it'd probably be about $300 to do all 4 of them on our dual axle trailer. And it's good to have at least 1 or 2 spares for your road trips. Probably about $15 if you have to replace the lights on the trailer, and then maybe another $15 to $20 for the wiring harness. Let me tell you, lights don't seem to last well on a trailer. I mean, you're constantly dipping them into the water, salt water, things corrode. They don't last long. We've had it where the tires will blow and it'll actually took out the lights a couple times. So it seems like we're constantly having to work on trailer lights. Axles last a pretty good while, maybe 8 to 10 years I think is what we got out of ours, and then we replaced them. Tires, don't go cheap on tires, that'd be my advice. These models we have are actually the best ones we've had. They've lasted a road trip to the Keys, to Alabama, all throughout the season. Usually every year it seemed like we'd have a tire or 2 blow out. But these have been the best, and they've lasted a couple years. But it's definitely something you're gonna want to have that spare, and they do seem to go out more often, more common than something like a car. So if you're gonna have an offshore boat and be doing some fishing, you're gonna need fishing gear. That expenses also add up. Depending on what kind of fishing you do will depend on the gear you need. Something like TLD 20s for catching small dolphin, kingfish, cobia, stuff like that. Setup would probably be around $170 new. If you got a Tiagra 50 wide, like for wahoo and tuna and bigger fish, the reel would be about $700 plus a rod. So stuff like that adds up. And then of course you got your bait, ice, all those little things that you would have on a normal day of fishing. So the gear definitely does add up. Now, your boat also needs maintenance, those annual maintenance for your motors. For R300s, you can buy a maintenance kit for $309.95 per motor, last I checked. So in our case, we would need 2. But according to the manual, some of these things you don't need. They don't have to be replaced every year, just inspected. For example, spark plugs. Those are something you inspect. If they need to be replaced, replace them. But you don't necessarily have to do it every year, and that kit does come with it. So you could kind of parse it out and lower that price. Also, if you're going to be doing the maintenance on your motors, you'll save a lot of money. We do our own maintenance. We talked to a shop here in town, and it was $109 per hour and a minimum of 3.5 hours per motor. So we're talking a minimum of $381.50 per motor just for the service on the motors, not including the parts. So for our boat, we're talking over 700 plus parts. So if you're not a do-it-yourselfer, you got to factor that in to the cost of owning a boat. If you don't have a trailer and you plan on keeping your boat at like a marina or storage place, well, you're not gonna have the trailer cost, obviously, but storage costs can be pretty high too. I don't think you necessarily save by doing that. It just may be less of a hassle to trailer it, maybe a little more peace of mind, a little more convenient. So you just have to weigh that option and get some pricings on those places. So as you can see, owning a boat isn't cheap, unfortunately, not an offshore boat. Smaller boats, maintenance is smaller, fuel prices, it uses less fuel, less upkeep, things like that, like inshore, bass fishing, stuff like that. Bigger one, these prices can go way up. So you may be looking at a boat and buying a boat, and if you're just looking at the sticker price of that boat, you need to consider the uses to the prices that it would take to own it and maintain it. A lot of times, if you don't plan on using your boat often, you'd be better off in the long run just to charter a boat out whenever you want to fish. Or if you're going to be fishing with friends, keep these costs in mind and make sure you chip in on fuel and bait and stuff like that when you go out, okay? Now that you know how bad a mileage boats get, when you go out fishing with a buddy, be sure to chip in on gas. And I'm not talking like $5 or $10. You know, if you're going offshore, it's going to cost you more than that. But it's still cheaper than chartering if you're just going out with a buddy. So be a good crewmate and pitch in appropriately. If you have any other questions about owning a boat, upgrading to a boat this size, the yearly cost, stuff like that, let me know and we'll help you out as best we can. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.